protecting each and every one of our own innocent citizens from Russian missiles, bombs, and drones. In more than a year of war, Ukraine has made significant progress in this area. Modern air defense systems such as Patriot, SAMP-T or IRIS, mobile fire teams that rush to positions whenever needed, and aviation that has learned to destroy aerial targets coming from Russia. This exists, but it is still not enough. That is why Ukrainians have taken it upon themselves to close the skies over our country.
We want to establish a no-fly zone in order to protect our people due to the fact that innocent people are being killed directly. Knowing that new strikes and casualties are inevitable and will continue to occur, NATO has deliberately decided not to close the skies over Ukraine despite ongoing appeals for protection. The question remains, how many more deaths and losses will it take before the skies over Ukraine are finally secured and made safe?
Tired of endlessly asking such questions and explaining the need to close the skies over Ukraine, our defense forces began to act on their own. After all, taking control of the airspace has become a matter of survival for the entire nation. The first step towards success was the memorandum signed between Turkey and Ukraine at the beginning of July 2023. In particular, the countries agreed on military cooperation and announced the production of drones on Ukrainian territory.
This concerns cooperation in the military-industrial complex, in technology development, aid drone production, and other strategic sectors, as well as other key areas.
One of the drones to be produced under this agreement is the legendary Bayraktar TB2 unmanned aerial vehicle. This is the very bird that devastated columns of Russian equipment in the first days of the full-scale war. It was for this drone that Ukrainians raised over 500 million hryvnias in just 2 days. And these are the very drones that the company Baykar donated to Ukraine for free, moved by the unity of our people. Its flight range, when controlled from a ground station, is 1,500 kilometers. It is capable of carrying 150 kilograms at a maximum speed of over 220 kilometers per hour. In the air, the Bayraktar TB2 can stay aloft for more than a day and operate at a maximum altitude of 8,200 meters. As for armament, it is equipped with guided munitions, anti-tank guided missiles, and various types of precision-guided aerial bombs. The second drone that is to be produced in Ukraine is a more recent development, the Bayraktar Akinci. This is a high-altitude, long-range strike UAV equipped with a Ukrainian turboprop engine. It underwent testing at the end of 2019. This drone has a range of 7,500 kilometers. The allowable payload weight is 1.5 tons. At the same time, its maximum speed is over 360 kilometers per hour. This unmanned giant can climb to an altitude of more than 12 kilometers and stay airborne for about 25 hours. At the same time, the drone can be armed with air-to-air missiles, smart munitions, anti-tank missiles, as well as cruise missiles with a strike range of over 270 kilometers. The exact location of the factory where these drones will be manufactured is being kept strictly confidential. It is only known that, according to the signed memorandum, not only drones will likely be produced there, but for obvious reasons, detailed information is not being disclosed.
Construction work on this factory has already begun, and the factory is actually being built not just mentioned in memorandums, but the memorandum also refers to another type of production which I cannot talk about yet.
Ukrainian drone manufacturers are not idle either. It is known that back in mid-2019, Ukraine presented a prototype of its own long-range strike drone. Sokol 300 is a development by the Domestic Design Bureau, Luch. The declared flight range is almost 3,500 kilometers. That's like flying from Kyiv to Moscow and back twice, or one way to Novosibirsk.
This optics, for example, allows you to detect movement from an altitude of 3, 5, or even 10 kilometers at a distance of up to 50 kilometers. Range to avoid anti-aircraft fire.
A significant number of drones are now covering the skies over the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces, as well as in frontline zones. Hundreds of Western drones were purchased mainly by volunteer organizations, and now they are an integral part of almost every unit of Ukraine's defense forces.
The war that is happening now is an army, a war of artillery and drones. This topic is very relevant right now, and it is extremely important for everyone directly involved in the defense of Ukraine. But whereas before we had to crawl on our bellies through minefields, go behind enemy lines, and somehow adjust artillery or gather intelligence, now it's enough to launch a little drone like this and fly it over there.
In peacetime, essentially a toy has truly become a formidable weapon in war. Dozens of videos showing explosive devices dropping on the heads of the rashists have taught these uninvited guests to listen carefully to every rustle and to keep their heads held high. Not out of pride for the so-called second army in the world, but so they don't miss the next gifts from the sky, courtesy of the Ukrainian armed forces.
With a little drone like this costing 50,000, well, you can't really kill anyone or anything like that. Here it's about demoralizing the enemy personnel as much as possible, constantly, as we say, keeping them on edge. There are sections of the front where our guys are working. They're so afraid that they don't even dare to leave their dugouts during the day.
Ukrainian ingenuity and resourcefulness have also made it possible to convert ordinary civilian drones into combat drones. Homemade drop systems, more powerful munitions, and reinforced control panels for greater range. All of this enables our military to successfully destroy superior enemy forces.
This kind of household drone modified for military use can, on the one hand, adjust artillery fire, and on the other hand, it can fly out and conduct reconnaissance. That is, identify the locations for the personnel, the movement of columns, and the storage of equipment. There are also drop systems, but that's a separate story.
In fact, it's like an anti-tank guided missile with 1.5 kilograms of happiness falling from the sky. 500 millimeters of armor penetration. In fact, it's a flying anti-tank guided missile. And it already flies farther than 8 kilometers.
There are also some truly creative solutions for closing the sky found at the front. For example, dochodzimy a homemade machine gun assembled from 6 AK-47s. But such homemade devices are becoming increasingly rare among the military. Anti-aircraft systems and military air defense are being supplied to Ukraine by Western partners slowly but steadily. So, as practice has shown, the phrase, "this country cannot be defeated," actually applies not to Russia, but to those who have truly stood up to them. This is the secret weapon of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. Unique drones that help hunt at night for very challenging and difficult Russian targets and elusive ones.
This is a drone for striking pinpoint targets. It is capable of destroying armored vehicles, small fortifications, and groups of enemy personnel.
In approximately a year of its use, Ukraine reported destroyed targets worth more than $10 billion. These include the latest Russian electronic warfare systems, advanced radar stations, oil depots, weapon storage facilities, and more.
The Sych drone system has indeed been used by us for a considerably long time, and it has proven to be an extremely reliable and deadly weapon.
The Sych, developed by domestic engineers, has been in service with the mobile groups of the Gurmo for many months, but this has only recently become known. The intelligence agreed to lift the veil on what some of Ukraine's best units are working with, what these drones are capable of, how far they can fly, and what targets they can destroy. And most importantly, why the GUR chose to rely on domestic rather than Western technologies. About this, right now in the arsenal. It is also worth mentioning that the Owl is quite versatile. Drone. At the beginning of the war, the developers wanted to make it an analog of Russian reconnaissance drones. However, our engineers went much further. As a result, the drone turned out to be both strike-capable and reconnaissance, and in some cases, it can even deliver necessary supplies to our troops at remote positions.
At the beginning of its creation, the Sych drone was designed as a reconnaissance unit. Over time, it was upgraded and began to be used as a strike drone. This is how its effectiveness was increased. In particular, my friends from the 30s who were in the Sych unit, the 38th Marine Brigade, used this UAV to guide both our marine artillery and adjacent units onto targets, making it much more effective in destroying the enemy. Due to the flight range of this drone and the ability to gather intelligence far beyond the line of direct combat resistance. These drones can provide targets for HIMARS and other systems that can be used at longer distances.
But the Sych unit of the Ukrainian Armed Forces acquired it relatively recently. The pioneers were the fighters of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. They were the first to start taking this bird on missions and provided the initial feedback on its performance to the engineers.
The Sych command system has been extensively and effectively used by us for quite a long time, and it has proven to be a reliable and lethal weapon. We certainly use them in absolutely all regions where our units operate, and absolutely everywhere it has demonstrated high effectiveness.
The Sych began its flights at a distance of less than 50 kilometers. It was there that the search and destruction of enemy targets took place. But over time, the developers managed to almost double the flight range, thanks to which flights of the Sych have already been recorded in both directions at a distance of about 70 kilometers.
Its operational range is 60-70 kilometers, depending on the modification, and it is not entirely reconnaissance. That is its parallel function. Initially, it is an attack combat drone. It has a payload capacity of up to 4 kilograms, and it operates as follows. When reconnaissance data is obtained, satellite images, and a decision is made to use the Sych for its intended purpose, then the operational team equips it with ammunition and sends it along a pre-planned route.
At the same time, the Sych has demonstrated incredible resistance to Russian electronic warfare systems, allowing it to approach enemy positions almost unhindered.
It is equipped with not one but even 2 protected modules. These are 4-channel antennas. And it has information that is located in the autopilot module. This information is analyzed. There are specific operational algorithms that block false data the enemy tries to input regarding coordinates and altitude. It is resistant to this.
This was primarily achieved because during flight, the pilot has virtually minimal communication with the drone. It flies along a pre-selected route and strikes a predetermined target. But this also offers several advantages for the fighters.
It flies indeed independently, unlike Western counterparts that operate on radio communication and mostly fly during the daytime. It flies autonomously in a completely automated manner, allowing the crew to safely move away from the launch position above and avoid danger.
Here, it primarily concerns the retaliatory strikes of Russian drones. However, recent improvements to the drone allow fighters to hit targets deep in the rear without risking exposure to mortar or artillery fire.
The fact that with the drone you don't need to operate directly from combat formations. because we have a decent range from the launch point to the target point. If our target is not too deep, it can retreat further into the territory to avoid risking the crew from fire from the same mortars.
And now, about the targets. I repeat, in just over a year, thanks to the drone, they have been destroyed to the tune of $10 billion. This includes high-tech military equipment like radars, the latest Russian armored vehicles, and millions in damages to the Kremlin, from endless explosions at the occupiers' oil depots.
If we are talking about some fortification structures, then that's not its task. It can hit armored vehicles as it is equipped with different types of munitions, including anti-tank grenades. It has two mounts underneath to which munitions are attached, and it drops them synchronously according to the ballistic calculator installed there. These are warehouses, and these are concentrations of personnel. If we have intelligence data, we deploy it.
Meanwhile, the fighter's arsenal already has plenty of stories about unique operations.
We received intelligence data and sent the Owl for deployment. Then, after its return, since it operates autonomously, we cannot observe where it is, what it is doing, and so on. But when it returns, we extract the data, watch the video, and see whether the target was hit or not, and what other targets it saw along its path. And so the target was not hit. Since the intelligence data, if we are talking about satellite images, reaches us with a delay, and by the time the Owl reached the location of the radar station, under the ice it was no longer there. But a tent with personnel was detected. Therefore, another Owl was sent, which successfully dropped the munition.
Well, most importantly, the next day the radar station under the ice was discovered again and was finally finished off by the arrival of the Owl. The cost of this radar station is 700 million rubles or more, $5 billion.
This is a highly advanced drone for striking pinpoint targets. It is capable of destroying armored objects, small fortifications, as well as groups of enemy personnel. The main intelligence directorate is directly engaged in combat operations, and this is a tool through which we can save the lives of both our fighters and our people. Because they simply won't have to face the enemy one-on-one. The more there will be, the more such equipment there is, the fewer shooting battles there will be.
It is important to note that by destroying Russian radars and electronic warfare systems, Sych allows operators of simpler drones to work, giving them an entire sector for several days to search for and destroy targets.
Since it destroys radar stations, air defense systems, and in a very highly effective manner clears the way for other strike means, which are already kamikaze, thus creating a corridor.
So why did the GUA choose Sych specifically? The management also answered this question. It's all banal simple. It's Ukrainian. There are no disruptions in its supply. We are not dependent on Western partners who decide how many such UAVs to send and where they will fly. And most importantly, the GUR fighters are in constant contact with the developers who upgrade the drone at the first request, sending our fighters increasingly advanced weapons time and again.
I believe that we must primarily defend our technological innovations. Maximizing their use will allow us to improve production and enhance technical and tactical characteristics, because both weaknesses and strengths will manifest in practice.
Did you like this video? Then don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our new Arsenal channel. The link is in the description below the video.